Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm checking out the Eachine Micro Skyhunter FPV plane from Banggood.com. Yes, I've been wanting to do more plane stuff on the channel. The problem is though, I am short of space and planes take up a lot of space. Even this one, which is quite small, it's about the same size as the original Hubsan Spyhawk. It's all in one piece, so it still takes up a fair amount of space. So the wingspan is 780 millimeters across, or 31 inches, and the length is 540 millimeters, or 21 inches. The weight without a battery is 230 grams, and then we have got a FPV camera up front. So it comes with this. This is the EF01. It's a 25 milliwatt FPV camera, and it doesn't come built like this. You do have to build it up, but it does come with a 20 amp ESC, which supports a 3S battery. And then at the back we have got a quadcopter motor. It is a 2204 2300 kV motor with a max thrust of 440 grams, and then it's got this 6x3 prop as well that it comes with, so it's gonna zing, this one is. Now you do have to add some things. You have to add your own receiver, of course, and you also have to add your own battery. They recommend that you use a 1300 milliamp 3S battery with an XT60, so that is what I have got on here. And for the radio gear, I'm actually using the 4-channel X4R. It's not the SB version, so it's the 4-channel version because this one only needs 4 channels. We have got aileron input there for our banking. We have got elevator at the back for our up and down. There's no rudder on this one, so it's a bank and yank aircraft, I believe they call it. And then we've got 1 channel for the motor or ESC, and then lastly a 4th channel for the camera to plug in. So the camera comes with this little tiny JST connector, and this one on the end of it has a servo connector, and then that plugs straight into the receiver and powers the camera up. Now, I believe earlier versions of this model had a balance plug that went into the battery rather than the receiver, but I like this because it's all just plug and play. Well, as I mentioned, you do have to build this thing up, so it comes with the fuselage already built up. It's just 2 pieces together like that, and the motor's already installed, the ESC's already installed. What you have to do is glue the wings together. So I actually used hot glue here because I didn't have any CA, but it's probably best to use CA. We have 1 carbon strut going across there that you have to feed in, and then I used hot glue across there to glue those 2 pieces together. And if we take a look underneath here, there's actually more carbon spars as well, but they're not really structural. I guess they are just to make the wing a little bit stiffer. So you can see that we have got this one here and then this one here as well. We have got 2 servos in the wings, interestingly. These are Eachine branded servos. They are 5-gram servos, so that should be fine for this model. And then we have just got foam hinges here, I think. Yeah, so might need to reinforce that with a bit of tape after time. But then you have to glue these 2 things on here, so these connect here, and then we have got these rods here. I don't think they're carbon. No, not carbon. And you have to glue in the tail piece as well. And then it's really plug and play though. We've got this little servo connector here, and that goes to this servo at the back, so it's actually on the tail itself. And then that comes all the way through this boom here, and then out of the wing here, and then down into here. So the wing does come off, but it doesn't really save any space when the wing comes off because all you're left with is this sort of pod. Now, I've also put the stickers on here as well. It's not something I usually do because I like to keep it quite stealthy, but I thought the stickers were quite nice on this one. But I guess if you do want to lose a little bit of weight, then you can. Now, what I really like about this is the way that the canopy works. So it's using magnets, and they're very strong magnets, can you see? And then that just lifts off like that, and you're given 2 screws, and we have this camera plate, and the camera sort of points at a slight down angle so that we can do some nice FPV. And then these just screw in there. We have a piece of plywood here where that's screwed into, and those are the very strong magnets there, and there's some on the top as well, and that is because you get given this top with it as well, and that's also magnetic. And if you don't want to have the camera on here, maybe you want to stick the camera up here perhaps, then you can have that on the top there. And I recommend, if you're putting the camera back here, you do have this on the top, because this is a white model. Any white that goes into the camera here is going to mess up the dynamic range of the camera. So if you do want to stick this up there, I'd recommend that you put this on the front there, and then maybe you could stick like a Mobius Mini or something on the front there, or you could probably stick a Mobius Mini on the back here as well and get it balanced out. So there are 2 balance points here, and inside we can put our battery in, so I'll just lift that up there. So that's where the 1300 milliamp battery is, and then you can slide it back and forth to get the CG correct. The only thing that I struggled with is there's not really anywhere for your antennas to go. I've seen some people just keeping them inside the body, but this is the telemetry X4R, so I want to have my antennas going out the side there. It doesn't really matter if they flop around, because they're not going to get in the propeller like you would get with a mini quad. But if I just check out the balance here, it's a little bit nose heavy, so I probably could stick a Mobius on the back there and it would balance it out, but really I just need to push the battery back a little bit further. But it looks a really nice package, this one. So what I'm going to do next is take the wings off and show you how I've connected it inside. So there's just 2 bolts on the top there. They're metal bolts as well, so I've just untightened those, and then this slots in here like that. You can see that we have got all of these wires here. So this one here is going to the receiver, and this is the elevator, and then the 2 servos here, you get given this adapter, and those go into the one there, if you're wondering how these servos connect. And we have this plate inside which I have slid forward so that I can attach the camera, and I'll just unplug that so I can slide this receiver tray forward here so you can see how I've done it. So yeah, you've got this little plate on the inside. Like I say, it slides back and forth, and then I've got the X4R here. It's the non-SB version. It's just a 4-channel receiver there. I only need 4 channels. So I've got the camera powering off the spare channel here, and then the channel order, of course, for FR Sky is TAER. So we have got 1 here as the throttle, so this comes from the ESC that's already provided. In fact, you can see the ESC wires underneath. They're actually using bullet connectors, which is interesting. So you can disconnect the ESC, I guess. It's all plug and play here if you want to get the spare parts as well. So yeah, we've got throttle here on channel 1, and then channel 2 is across here. It's the next one, and this is aileron, so TAE. So elevator then is number 3, which is this one here, so underneath this one, and then underneath this one I have taken the mini GAST connector to power up the camera, and it's as simple as that. Now I am using the EU firmware of the Tyrannus, so I did have to flash this. And the way that you do that is you plug it into the S port, you reverse the positive and negative wire on the servo lead, and then that plugs into the back of the Tyrannus, and then you flash the external device with the EU firmware. I've done it a lot on my quadcopter build, so I'm not going to show you how I have done it in this instance, but it's fairly easy to do. And then what I found was quite nice actually is my antennas can just sort of sit underneath the magnets there. These magnets are just so strong. And then obviously what I did in order so that this reaches is I pushed this plate forward. So I did have the idea of maybe sticking a vector on this or autopilot. I do think it might be a little bit small to do that because, you know, there is a little bit of a struggle for space inside for a device like that. And I'm also concerned about the weight as well. You know, this is only a 3S model. Despite them being 20 amp ESCs, they're only rated for a 3S. So I don't think I could put a Vector or APM or Pixhawk on this thing. But I just want to fly it, you know, because I actually haven't flown FPV properly with goggles in a plane. Usually I fly the Hubsan Skyhawk with its little monitor. So yeah, you are going to need a way to FPV with this. And sometimes I connect a monitor to the handle here of the Tyrannus, big monitor with a DVR on it, and that's kind of a safe way to do it. But with this thing being small, I am going to try and fly it with goggles. So these are my Fat Shark Dominator HD3 goggles. I use them a lot on the channel. We've got the Fat Shark diversity receiver, Menace RC patch antenna, a Omway cloverleaf antenna, and of course a SD card in there so I can record what this thing is going to show. Now, some things I am concerned about is the size. You see, when it comes to planes, this doesn't go for quadcopters, but planes it does. Usually the smaller a plane is, the less stable it is, which is why I think the original Hubsan Skyhawk had a 6-axis gyro on it to stable it, and this one doesn't have that, so it's going to be kind of like flying acro with a quadcopter, but obviously with a plane anyway. Well, I've done that for years, so it shouldn't be a problem. The only thing I am concerned about is the stability of this. Now, I have heard good things about it, but also because it's small, I think it's going to be quite fast as well. And I don't have a huge amount of space, so I am concerned about the space flying this, so I'll have to see how I can FPV with it, if I can, if I have enough space to fly with it. The good thing about having no flight controller or any features like stabilization is I just have to set up a single model with no switches, and the only thing that I have done is set up the failsafe. So I've set the Tyrannus to no pulses, it's in D16 mode, and then you've got a little failsafe button on the receiver. And I tested the failsafe first of all, so I powered everything up, I got the motor going, turned off the transmitter, and it carried on flying. You don't want that, you want it to cut out. So what I did was I powered everything on, and then you've got a little failsafe button on the receiver. Just press it for a second or so, the green light will flash and it will record that position as the failsafe. And then I tried again, I turned up the throttle and turned off the transmitter, and then after a second or so everything cut out. So that is what you want. I also had to reverse the aileron as well. So the way that I remember it is that when the aircraft is facing away from you, if you press in that aileron there, then this one should lift up, and press that aileron to the right, then this one should lift up. And then the elevator was okay, and also the throttle was okay as well. So there's no arming procedure on this, but you know, there never is on planes really. I guess you have a couple of seconds for the ESC to boot up, and if your throttle isn't at the bottom there, then I don't think it will start arming or moving. So it does have to be at 0 throttle before the prop will spin anyway. And I guess that's another thing I'm concerned about as well, is when throwing this thing, because it doesn't have a landing gear, you can see there that the prop is going to get very close to the hand when throwing it, so I might have to find a different way of throwing it, or see how much power it needs, because I could maybe throw it and then put the power on if I'm quick enough. And yeah, so yeah, really want to get this one flying, so let's go and do that. We're away! Oh my god, it's a fast machine. Just slow it down a little bit. It is going to rain any second, so I need to be quick. Oh, it's really stable. Needs a little bit of elevator trim. See if I can do that. Yeah, it needs quite a lot of elevator trim. It is running a little bit nose heavy with that camera on the front. Oh, mind the trees. But it's a lot more stable than I thought it was going to be. Can feel the rain coming down on me already, but I've got constant elevator trim in. Trying to put the trim in as I'm flying. Oh, it's going to throw it down. It's in a bit more throttle. It is very fast, just as I thought. Still needs more elevator trim in. Oh, it's starting to rain. Thanks, world. Well, there you go. I managed to fly it anyways. It's a nice flying machine, but I think I better come in for a landing because it is raining. Not a dignified landing there at all. And I'm going to have to find some better time to fly, but it's impossible this time of year. It just will not let me fly. I have to spot the smallest gap in the weather and it just constantly rains. But there you go, that's my very short flight of the Micro Skyhunter. This is a flight that I did probably just about 15 minutes later, and the snow came down and it just stopped again, enough for me to get a full flight in. Now this time I managed to switch to the FPV goggles. It was still snowing a little bit, but luckily none got on the camera. So let's talk about some of the things that I wasn't able to talk about in the first flight because of the weather. You can see the nose is dipping there, and I do think that in this configuration they recommend a 1300 milliamp battery. However, I would say that to get the CG right, unless you are able to push the battery really far back, then you'll want to use probably a 850 milliamp, maybe 1000 milliamp battery. Now, I was getting great flight times out of this. This particular flight was a 12-minute flight time. Now, something that I should have done was put a little voltage beeper on the balance port of the battery, because you have no idea when your battery is going to run out. So that is a issue with this one, but not too much of an issue. Like I say, you can just put one of those voltage buzzers on. Now you'll notice it shifting around a lot, and those subscribers of the channel who watch my quadcopter videos and maybe haven't ever flown a plane before will probably think, oh, that's a bad tune, but that's literally how a plane works. You know, it's using the wind and air and it gets knocked about a bit. That's why we have those vertical stabilizers there. And something that I definitely missed from this model is a rudder. So I think usually I'm used to flying around planes in this small space as I do a roll there. I usually get away with it because I can pile the rudder in and do a coordinated turn, but with this one you sort of just have to bank the wing over and use the elevator and then sort of just wait for it to turn. You can't force it really to turn any faster other than completely winging over, which then gives a very unstable turn. So I think I just about have enough space here to fly this model, but you'll notice that I'm mostly doing left-hand turns, and that is because it was a complete crosswind on this day, and if I turn right towards the trees then it just blows me straight towards the trees, so I have a little bit of a go of it here. But yeah, I didn't want to risk it, so because of that crosswind I mainly stuck to doing left-hand turns. I didn't want to turn into one of the trees there because, like I say, you can't use that rudder to get over. Now you will notice I'm able to do some aerobatics with this model. Alright, it's not an aerobatic model, and it wasn't too keen on this loop that I went for. I needed to give it more power, really. But yeah, you can do aerobatics with this one. You can fly it inverted as well. I flew it inverted for a little while. One thing I will say, though, it is a fairly noisy model. We have a quadcopters motor on there, and you can sort of potter about at about 50-60% throttle once you're in the air, but low down I was finding that I was having to use full throttle a lot of the time. So I think maybe a different KV motor might have helped that. Maybe it'd be a little bit more efficient as well. Maybe something like a 2208 motor or something like that with a lower KV. It wouldn't scream so much, but we'd still have the power there. Speaking of power, you have to give it an almighty throw when you hand launch it as well. I tried to launch it via the wing and I just couldn't get enough power out of it, so I risked it by throwing it from underneath, because of course you can get your hand caught in the prop, but if you let go quick enough then it's fine. As I go for another loop there, I have to say I was really enjoying flying this model once I got settled. The camera reception was good. The dynamic range wasn't so hot, so when I pointed it sort of towards the clouds and the sky, then the ground did get a little bit washed out. But I have to say, having that camera angle tilted slightly downwards did work. I was able to fly straight and I was able to see a lot of the ground. And yeah, it was fun to fly. I have to say, a relatively cheap model. I do hear that if you go and buy the kit and all the parts separately, then you can get it cheaper. So if you want to add all that stuff up, and if you think it's worth it, then definitely do that. And there's loads of spare parts for this one, which I'm really pleased about as well, because, you know, I'm flying in the snow here and eventually it's going to get damaged. See, I'm getting more confident with it now, doing more rolls, etc. But yes, I don't think you'd be able to add a vector to this. I think that would push it too much for its weight. However, I wouldn't rule out maybe sticking a quadcopter flight controller on there and sticking GPS on there. Be a much lighter setup, like one of those little mini Naze boards or CC3D boards or whatever, and I'm sure you could do something there, maybe a minim OSD. But I kind of felt like how it was now, it was kind of being pushed at its weight. Look at that, as I do some inverted, and it doesn't really lose any height either, so I was quite pleased with that. But definitely missing the rudder. Yeah, I think that's the thing that I noticed the most. In fact, I have flown some planes that if you wing over and don't use the rudder, the thing will sort of just skew and you won't be able to do a turn at all. It's a strange thing, but this one, it does dip its wing just far enough to be able to do what you need to do in a short space. And I'm now currently wondering if I could modify this in some way to stick a rudder on, because I was really enjoying how it flew. I think if I was to upgrade the FPV gear, you could probably stick like a Runcam Swift 2 on there. So you could probably hook up the telemetry so you could see how much voltage your batteries got left. Got a little bit of height on here as well. That camera reception was absolutely fine, even though it's only 25 milliwatt. These cameras are amazing. Of course, the higher up that you get, the more difficult it is to see sort of what you're flying over if you've got a short space. So I would say be careful of that, sort of flying over the trees there but not realizing it. But trying some aerobatics out, I was quite surprised on the roll rate actually, and that's something else I should talk about. I didn't put any expo on or anything like that, or any rate, so this is full throw of the aileron and elevator, and I think the elevator would be fine for a beginner, but maybe the aileron is maybe sensitive for a beginner. I don't know. I thought it was fine because there wasn't like loads of throw there that it was too twitchy, but there was enough to be able to sort of get out of trouble if you need to. And I, have this small amount of space, so I was needing a lot of throw. Now I'm actually trying to do my first ever FPV landing here. However, annoyingly, I have someone walking across the field, standing right where I want to land. Now, at this point, I'm sort of trying to guess how the battery's doing, but if like with a plane, for example, because it doesn't take a lot of power to move the servos, you can sort of fly them to the point where you can start to hear the power going in the motor. And I was trying to do that, but it wasn't really sagging. I reckon I could have maybe even longer flight time with this, maybe 15 to 20 minutes. But luckily, I had that extra time because like each one of these attempts is a landing now. But of course, I want to do an FPV landing because I didn't really want to lift the goggles up, because I don't like doing that. If I'm flying through goggles, I like to always be looking through the goggles. I don't like a sort of gap where I lift the goggles up to sort of spot the plane, and if I can't spot it, with it being white and everything, then I can end up doing a crash. But this guy just decided to stand right where I wanted to land. He has every right to, of course, but it was very annoying, and I wanted to make sure I could do a safe landing without hitting anyone. And I've also got the crosswind to deal with as well, which was challenging, so I thought maybe can I come to it from the other angle. But one thing that you will always learn about flying planes and quadcopters is they will always land. Not necessarily in the place that you want them to, but they will land. But yeah, that is my review of the Micro Skyhunter from Eachine and Banggood. I was pleasantly surprised with it. I thought it flew nicely. I thought it flew very stable for a machine that was this small, because that's usually a problem. You'll notice planes getting knocked about like this. Anyway, so I'll put a link in the description to this model and the parts that I use. So as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.